Lakota warrior had to leave with his tribe. This final kiss changed everything. The morning air was crisp and carried the faint smell of smoke from the campfires that dotted the edge of the prairie. The Lakota warrior stood quietly near his horse, looking over the landscape he had known all his life. The rolling plains stretched far beyond what the eye could see, painted in shades of gold and brown as the early sunlight touched the tall grasses. Birds called to one another from the distant trees, and the wind whispered softly, stirring memories in his mind. Today was not just any day. It was the day his tribe would move, forced by the changing seasons and the growing need for safety. The news had come quickly, and preparation had left no time for hesitation. Yet for him the weight of the journey was more than physical. It pressed on his heart, heavier than any pack he could carry. His name was Wakasa, a young man respected for his calm nature and steady presence. Unlike many who boasted loudly of their courage, he showed strength quietly, through actions rather than words. He had been trained since childhood to understand the land, to read the signs of the weather, and to care for the people around him. Today, that training felt insufficient. Today he faced a decision that no one had taught him to make, a decision of the heart, complicated by duty. For weeks he had been aware that his connection with a woman from a nearby settlement had grown into something that went beyond simple friendship. Her name was Ayanna, a woman of quiet strength herself, intelligent and kind, whose eyes carried the warmth of understanding. They had met by chance at the edge of the prairie, exchanging small smiles at first, simple gestures that gradually built trust. Over time, those gestures became conversations, shared laughter, and moments of comfort. They had grown to rely on one another, even in the brief hours they could spend together. Yet their relationship existed in a fragile space, bounded by the distance between their worlds. Ayanna was not of the tribe, and he knew the customs and expectations of his people would not allow him to remain with her freely. Still, his heart was pulled toward her, and the thought of leaving without a proper farewell tormented him. The camp around him buzzed with activity. Elders spoke quietly to one another, discussing the safest routes for travel, while younger members carried supplies and helped the elderly onto the horses and wagons. Children ran among the tents, their laughter mingling with the clatter of moving equipment. Wakasa moved among them, offering a helping hand, adjusting a strap here, steadying a frightened child there. Each act felt ordinary, yet to him it carried the weight of finality. He knew that leaving this land and these people behind, even temporarily, was a matter of survival, but leaving Ayanna was something else entirely. As he prepared his own horse, brushing its coat and checking the saddle, his mind wandered back to the nights they had spent sitting by a small fire near the river. Ayanna had shared stories of her family and her own experiences, tales of hardship and resilience that mirrored his own upbringing. She had laughed at his dry sense of humor, teased him gently about his seriousness, and sometimes, when the night was quiet, simply rested her hand on his arm, a gesture that spoke volumes. In those moments, Wakasa had felt a warmth he had never known, a connection that went beyond companionship. But he also knew that this warmth was fragile, vulnerable to the realities of their lives. The thought of saying goodbye brought a knot to his stomach. He could imagine the moment vividly, standing face to face with her, feeling the tug of longing and the ache of separation, yet knowing that words might fail him. What could he say that would honor both his duty to his people and the depth of his feelings for her? He could not promise a future that was uncertain, and yet to leave without acknowledgement would feel like a betrayal of the bond they had formed. He looked out across the prairie again, as if seeking guidance from the land itself. The grasses swayed in the wind, endless and eternal, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to imagine a life where the paths of his duty and his heart could converge. Wakasa's closest friend, a fellow warrior named Mato, approached, carrying extra provisions for the journey. Mato was older and had seen many seasons of movement and change, yet he carried himself with a steady calm that reassured those around him. He greeted Wakasa with a nod, sensing the weight on his friend's mind without the need for words. They had grown up together, hunting and learning the ways of the land side by side, and Mato understood that some burdens were carried quietly, without complaint. Wakasa shared a glance with him, a silent acknowledgement of the struggle he faced. Mato simply placed a hand on Wakasa's shoulder, offering support without intrusion. and that small gesture gave Wakasa a fleeting sense of comfort. As the sun rose higher, the tribe began to move in preparation for departure. Horses were saddled, supplies packed, and the elders gave final instructions. Wakasa took one last look at the familiar terrain, committing every detail to memory. The curve of the river, the clusters of trees that marked safe paths, the distant hills that had stood as silent guardians over generations. Each landmark carried memories of his childhood, lessons learned, and moments shared with his people. Leaving them behind, even temporarily, felt like leaving a part of himself. Yet he reminded himself that the survival of the tribe required sacrifice, and he steeled his resolve. Before the tribe could depart, Wakasa made a decision. He would visit Ayana one last time, not for a long conversation, not for promises that could not be kept, but to honor what they had shared. He hoped to leave with a moment that would sustain both of them during the separation. He mounted his horse and moved quietly away from the main camp, careful not to draw attention. The prairie stretched endlessly before him, and the morning wind carried both the chill of winter and the warmth of memories he had made with Ayana. With every step, his heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and sorrow. When he reached the small clearing where Ayana often waited, he found her already there. She was standing near the river, her hands clasped loosely in front of her, watching the water flow with a contemplative expression. The sight of her brought a mixture of joy and pain. She turned as he approached, and a small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on her face. No words were spoken immediately. They simply regarded each other, the silence heavy with unspoken emotions. Wakasa dismounted and approached her slowly, careful to convey respect and affection through his demeanor. They stood together, the distance between them a measure of the reality they faced. Wakasa reached out gently, taking her hand in his. The warmth of her skin against his was a reminder of the closeness they had shared, the moments of comfort and trust that had become so precious. He could feel the tension in her grip, the same mix of longing and understanding that he felt in his own chest. They spoke quietly, reminiscing about small moments, shared laughter, the way she had taught him to notice the subtle beauty in the landscape, the kindness she had shown when he had struggled with his own doubts. Each word was deliberate, chosen to honor their bond without making promises that could not be kept. As the morning sun climbed higher, the time for departure grew nearer. Wakasa knew he could not linger, yet he also knew that leaving without a farewell would haunt them both. Finally, with a gentle squeeze of her hand, he leaned forward, and they shared a kiss, soft, brief, and full of meaning. It was not a kiss of passion, but a kiss of acknowledgement, a recognition of the connection that would endure despite the distance. In that single moment, everything changed. The kiss became a memory they would carry, a source of strength during the months ahead. Reluctantly, Wakasa pulled back, looking into her eyes one last time. No words could express the mix of emotions he felt: love, sorrow, duty, and hope. He mounted his horse once more, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing upon him, yet also carrying the warmth of their shared moment. As he rode back toward the main camp, he knew that the journey ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But the memory of the final kiss, the understanding it carried, would sustain him, reminding him of what he fought for and what he hoped to return to. The tribe began its departure as the sun rose fully into the sky, casting long shadows across the prairie. Wakasa rode among his people, his heart divided between duty and desire, strength and vulnerability. He watched the landscape pass by, each bend in the river, and rise in the hill, a reminder of home, of life, and of the connection that waited for him on the other side of distance and time. And as he moved forward, he carried with him the knowledge that some bonds once formed endure beyond miles, seasons, and circumstance, shaping the journey in ways that would be remembered long after the wind had swept across the plains. The prairie stretched endlessly in every direction as the Lakota warrior, Wakasa, rode alone. The dust from the hooves of his horse rose slowly in the morning sun, creating faint clouds that drifted over the golden grasses. His mind was crowded with thoughts of Ayana, the woman whose presence had grown more important to him than he had ever expected. Even as he moved toward the small clearing where they had planned to meet before the tribe departed, he felt the tension between his duty to his people and the longing in his heart. Each step of the horse was steady, yet inside him his heart raced. He had learned to move calmly in the wilderness, to read the signs of danger, but nothing could prepare him for the emotional challenge that awaited. When he arrived at the clearing, Ayanna was already there. She stood near the river, gazing at the slow current, as if it carried her thoughts away. The morning light caught her hair, and a breeze stirred it softly across her shoulders. She turned when she heard the soft sound of Wakasa's horse approaching. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was not empty, but full of shared history and unspoken feelings. The memory of their last kiss, brief yet profound, lingered in their minds like the echo of a song. Both knew that words alone could not capture the complexity of what they felt. Yet each moment together mattered more than anything else. Wakasa dismounted slowly, careful not to rush the moment he approached her with steady steps, each one measured and thoughtful. When he reached her, he extended his hand, and she took it gently. The warmth of her hand reminded him of why this meeting mattered, why the distance that awaited them felt unbearable. They walked together along the edge of the river, neither speaking immediately, letting the sounds of nature, the rush of water, the call of birds, the whisper of wind through the grasses, fill the space between them. The quiet allowed them to simply exist together, to acknowledge the depth of their bond without needing words. Finally, Ayanna spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of emotion that Wakasa felt deeply. "I know you have to leave," she said softly. "And I understand why. I never expected otherwise." Her words were measured, showing her strength, yet her eyes revealed the sadness she could not fully hide. Wakasa nodded, his own voice catching slightly. "It is my duty. My people need me, but it does not make this any easier. Leaving you, it feels like leaving a part of myself behind." He paused, struggling to put into words the mixture of loyalty, love, and regret that pressed on his heart. They continued to walk slowly, the river beside them reflecting the sunlight in sparkling patterns. Wakasa recalled the moments that had brought them together, the small gestures, the quiet conversations, the moments of laughter. He remembered the first time they had shared a meal near the river, talking about their families and the different paths their lives had taken. He remembered the evening when she had shown him a hidden path through the woods, a secret place where only the two of them had gone. Those memories were precious, fragile treasures he knew he would carry with him.
Ayanna looked at him, her gaze steady.
Do you think we will see each other again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question was simple, yet it carried the weight of uncertainty. Wakasa thought carefully before answering.
"I do not know what the future holds.
But I do know that our bond is strong. It will guide us, even when we are apart. And if we are meant to see each other again, we will." His words were careful, honest, and filled with the quiet strength that had always defined him. She nodded, trusting his sincerity, even as her heart ached at the thought of separation. They found a spot near the riverbank and sat down on a large rock. The conversation deepened, moving from memories to reflections on life and duty. Wakasa spoke of his responsibilities to the tribe, the careful balance required to protect his people, and the lessons he had learned from elders. He explained how every decision, every movement, had to consider not just his own desires but the welfare of the community. Ayanna listened intently, understanding not only the weight of his duties but the courage it took to shoulder them without complaint. In turn, she shared her own thoughts, her experiences in her settlement, and the way she had learned to navigate challenges and uncertainty. As the morning passed, they shared stories of hope and resilience. Wakasa told her about the elders who had taught him to read the signs in the sky, to predict the weather, to notice subtle changes in the land that could mean safety or danger. Ayanna spoke of her family, the hardships they had endured, and the moments of kindness that had shaped her understanding of the world. Their conversation was a bridge between their two worlds, a connection that transcended the boundaries of tribe and settlement. Each story, each shared memory, strengthened the bond they both cherished. Time moved quickly, and Wakasa knew that the moment for final departure was approaching. Yet he also understood that rushing would diminish the significance of their time together. He wanted to leave her with a memory that would sustain both of them during the months apart. They stood together looking at the river, the sunlight dancing on the water like 1,000 tiny flames. Wakasa reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from Ayana's face. The simple gesture carried volumes of meaning, affection, respect, and the promise that their bond would endure despite the distance. He spoke softly. "This moment, I want you to remember it. Let it guide you when I am not near. Let it remind you that we have shared something important, something lasting."
Ayana nodded, her eyes glistening.
"I will remember," she replied, "and I will carry it with me just as I know you will." The sincerity in their voices, the honesty in their hearts, made the words more powerful than any grand gesture could have been. They stood in quiet companionship, savoring the moment, knowing it might be their last for some time. Finally, they shared a second kiss, tender and meaningful, sealing the connection that had grown between them. It was not a kiss born of impatience or desire alone, but of understanding and respect. It was a promise unspoken yet deeply felt that their bond would not break, no matter the miles or the challenges that lay ahead. Wakasa felt a mix of sorrow and hope, knowing that leaving was necessary, yet comforted by the strength of the connection he shared with Ayana. As the sun climbed higher, Wakasa knew he had to return to his tribe. He mounted his horse carefully, glancing back at her one last time. Ayana's eyes followed him, a mixture of pride, affection, and quiet sorrow reflected in her gaze. The moment was heavy with emotion, yet it also carried a sense of peace. They had acknowledged the importance of their bond, honored it with sincerity, and created a memory that would sustain them both. The journey back to the camp was slower than usual. Wikasa's mind wandered between the responsibilities awaiting him and the warmth of the moments he had shared. The landscape, familiar and comforting, seemed both expansive and intimate, reflecting the duality of his life, bound to duty yet connected by heart. As he approached the tribe, he found Mata waiting, sensing the weight on his friend's shoulders. Wakasa gave him a small nod, silently conveying that all was well, even as his heart still lingered with thoughts of Ayana. Back in the camp, life continued around him. Elders gave instructions, younger members prepared for the journey, and the children played as they had in the mornings before. Wakasa moved among them with his usual calm demeanor, assisting where needed, yet inside, he carried a quiet fire of emotion. The moments with Ayana had reminded him of the strength that comes from personal connection, the courage required to balance heart and duty, and the resilience needed to move forward even when longing remains. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the prairie, Wakasa found a quiet moment to reflect. He thought about the journey ahead, the responsibilities awaiting him, and the hope that he and Ayana would meet again. He understood that life was often about balancing the needs of others with the desires of the heart, and that true strength came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with honesty and courage. The memory of their shared morning, their conversations, and their kiss would be his guide, a quiet reminder of love, respect, and connection. As night fell, the camp settled into a calm rhythm. Fires glowed softly, and the sounds of the prairie carried through the cool air. Wakasa sat quietly, thinking of Ayana, imagining her looking out over the river, holding their shared moment close to her heart. In that silence he felt both the ache of separation and the warmth of what they had shared. It was a lesson he would carry forward, the understanding that love and duty are not always easy to balance, but both are worthy of effort and respect. The stars began to appear, one by one, twinkling in the vast sky. Wakasa gazed at them, knowing that Ayana might look up at the same sky, feeling a connection despite the distance. It was a comfort, a quiet assurance that some bonds, once formed, endure beyond separation. And as he prepared for the journey with his tribe, he carried within him the memory of a morning by the river, a conversation full of truth, and a kiss that would echo in his heart through the months to come. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a warm golden light across the prairie as the tribe moved steadily through the land. Wakasa rode among his people, his posture steady and calm, Yet his mind was restless. The familiar sounds of the tribe, the clatter of hooves, the rustle of packs, the quiet conversations of the elders, were present, yet he felt a sense of distance from them. His heart remained with Ayanna, with the moments they had shared by the river. Every now and then his gaze drifted toward the horizon, imagining the gentle slope where she had stood, the sunlight catching her hair, the quiet strength in her eyes. He could almost feel her presence, and that thought brought a mixture of comfort and longing. As they traveled, the landscape shifted. The flat plains gave way to gentle hills, dotted with clusters of trees and patches of wild flowers that had survived the harsh winter frost. Waikasa's horse moved carefully over the uneven ground, yet his thoughts remained elsewhere. He watched families within the tribe, parents guiding their children, elders sharing wisdom, young warriors walking with confidence, and he realized how connected their lives were, how much responsibility rested on each person. He understood that his own role, though it had been quietly assumed, was crucial. He needed to be alert, to help make decisions, to be ready for any danger along the trail. Yet the memory of Ayanna tugged at him, reminding him that life was not only about duty, it was also about connection, love, and the moments that gave life meaning. The morning passed, and the tribe paused for a short rest near a small stream. The sound of water trickling over stones was soothing, a gentle rhythm that allowed Waikasa a brief moment to breathe. He dismounted his horse and knelt by the water, cupping it in his hands and letting it run through his fingers. The cold, clear water felt refreshing, but it also reminded him of Ayanna, of the river where they had shared their final moments together before the journey began. He closed his eyes and let the memory wash over him. The quiet conversation, the soft laughter, the warmth of her hand in his, and the kiss that had stayed in his heart. It was a bittersweet comfort, a reminder that even in absence, some connections remained strong. Nearby, the younger members of the tribe played quietly, laughing and chasing one another across the grassy banks. Their joy was innocent, uncomplicated, and for a moment Waikasa envied them. They had not yet learned the weight of responsibility or the ache of separation from someone they cared for deeply. He smiled faintly, thinking that perhaps this joy was something worth protecting, something that gave meaning to the sacrifices he had to make. Mato, his closest friend, approached and handed him a small bundle of provisions. Without words, they exchanged understanding. Two men who had shared many journeys together, who knew the silent burdens carried by each other. Waikasa nodded, grateful for the silent support, and returned his attention to the path ahead. The journey resumed, the tribe moving with purpose yet careful of the uneven terrain. Waikasa found himself riding near the elders, listening as they discussed the safest route forward. Their words were measured, full of wisdom and experience, and Waikasa absorbed every detail. He realized that while his heart longed for Ayanna, his responsibility to the tribe could not be ignored. The balance between personal desire and duty was delicate, and he needed to maintain focus if he was to guide and protect those who relied on him. He watched as the younger warriors learned from the elders, noting how each action, each decision, was a lesson in resilience and survival. As afternoon approached, the landscape grew more challenging. Hills rose sharply, and the path became narrow, requiring careful navigation. Waikasa stayed alert, scanning the surroundings for signs of danger, a sudden drop, a hidden obstacle, or the distant sound of predators. Each decision mattered, not just for him, but for the tribe. He felt the weight of leadership, even in small moments, and he carried it with quiet determination. Yet in the back of his mind, the thought of Ayanna remained, a steady flame of hope and warmth that guided him through the challenges of the journey. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, the tribe set up camp near a grove of trees. Fires were lit, smoke rising into the sky, and the comforting smell of cooking food filled the air. Waikasa helped secure the camp, ensuring that the children and elders were safe and comfortable. His movements were calm and deliberate, a reflection of the training and experience he had gained over the years. Yet even as he worked, his thoughts returned to Ayanna, to the quiet strength she had shown and to the way her presence had changed him. The memory of their final kiss was still vivid, a gentle reminder that some bonds could endure even in absence. That night, as the camp settled and the children lay close to their parents, Wakasa found a moment of solitude. He walked a short distance from the fire, the glow casting long shadows across the ground. The cool night air carried the sense of grass, earth, and wood smoke, and he took a deep breath, letting the calm of the prairie fill him. He thought about the path ahead, the long journey that would test both his strength and patience, and the responsibility he bore for the tribe's safety. But he also thought about Ayanna, and the courage it had taken for both of them to face the separation without complaint. Their connection was a quiet anchor, a reminder that life's challenges could be faced with resilience and hope. The stars appeared slowly, twinkling in the vast expanse above. Wakasa looked up, imagining that Ayanna might be doing the same, that her eyes could be turned toward the same sky. The thought gave him a small measure of comfort, a sense that they were still connected despite the distance. He recalled the lessons of the elders, the importance of observation, patience, and careful action, and he realized that these lessons applied not only to survival, but to the heart as well. Love, like duty, required attention, care, and respect. It required the courage to let go when necessary, and the wisdom to know when to hold on. In the quiet of the night, Wakasa allowed himself to reflect on the future. He did not know when he would see Ayanna again, or what changes the seasons might bring, but he understood that the bond they shared was significant, meaningful, and enduring. It was a connection built on trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences, something that could not be easily broken by distance or circumstance. He promised himself that he would carry this memory with him, that it would guide him through challenges, sustain him through hardship, and remind him of what truly mattered. The next morning, the tribe prepared to continue the journey. Wakasa rode with a renewed sense of purpose, balancing the needs of the tribe with the hope that he and Ayanna would meet again. He observed the children, the elders, and the younger warriors, noting how each person contributed to the safety and cohesion of the group. The lessons he had learned from the elders and the guidance he had received from his friend Matto provided him with strength and clarity. Yet the thought of Ayanna remained close to his heart, a quiet reminder of love, hope, and resilience. Throughout the days that followed, the tribe faced challenges, narrow trails, sudden weather changes, and moments that tested their patience and endurance. Wakasa navigated each obstacle with care, always mindful of the people depending on him. Yet even in these moments his mind would drift to Ayanna, to the memories of their conversations, laughter, and the quiet understanding they had shared. These thoughts provided a source of comfort, a gentle reminder that even in separation some connections endure. Occasionally Wakasa would pause to observe the prairie, noting familiar landmarks and finding reassurance in the landscape. He remembered the times he had shared with Ayanna near the river, the quiet moments of conversation, and the simple gestures that had grown into something meaningful. These memories, vivid and clear, strengthened his resolve. He understood that life required both responsibility and heart, that the courage to care for others did not diminish the need to honor one's own emotions. By the time the sun began to set each evening, Wakasa found moments of quiet reflection. He would sit near the fire, gazing at the stars, and let his thoughts drift to Ayanna. He imagined her looking at the same sky, perhaps thinking of him as he thought of her. The connection between them, though unseen, was tangible in his heart, a steady source of hope and comfort. It reminded him that the path forward, while challenging, was guided by both duty and love, each reinforcing the other. As the journey continued, Wakasa grew more aware of the lessons in resilience, patience, and careful observation. The land itself became a teacher. The shifting weather, the movements of wildlife, and the changes in terrain all required attentiveness. These lessons mirrored his internal struggle, the balance between duty to his tribe and longing for Ayanna. Through this reflection he understood that life's challenges, whether in the heart or in the world, could be met with strength, wisdom, and respect. With each passing day, the memory of Ayanna became a source of motivation. Her strength, courage, and understanding inspired him to remain vigilant, to care for his people, and to navigate the trials of the journey with patience. The connection they shared, though distant, was a reminder that even in separation, bonds of love and respect could endure. Wakasa carried this truth with him, knowing that it would guide his actions, sustain his spirit, and provide hope for the future. The days had grown shorter, and the chill of early winter crept across the prairie as the tribe continued its journey. Waikaso rode at the front, alongside the elders, observing the terrain and listening carefully to the winds. The world around him was both beautiful and harsh. Frost glittered on the tips of the grasses in the morning sun, and the distant hills were shadowed in gray as clouds gathered. He had grown accustomed to the challenges of travel, the narrow trails, the uneven ground, and the constant need to watch for danger. But even with this experience, his mind was never far from Ayanna. Every step, every glance at the horizon reminded him of her. Her presence lingered in his heart, even though miles separated them. The tribe had faced several small challenges over the past few days. A sudden shift in weather had forced them to find shelter for the night, and they had navigated narrow trails that tested both their courage and patience. Wicasa had moved carefully, making sure the younger warriors understood the importance of caution and observation. He had learned from elders that leadership was not only about strength but also about guiding others safely through difficulty. Yet amid these practical concerns, his thoughts often wandered to the woman he longed to see again. Each memory of her was vivid: the soft curve of her smile, the warmth of her hand in his, the quiet confidence in her eyes. One afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Wicasa noticed a subtle change in the weather. The clouds above the hills were darker than usual, and the wind shifted direction. He signaled to the elders, who quickly consulted one another. Together, they decided to adjust the route slightly to avoid low-lying areas where the wind could bring colder rain.
The younger warriors followed his lead without question, trusting his judgment.
Mato rode alongside him, offering quiet words of encouragement. Wicasa appreciated the support. It reminded him that even in moments of uncertainty he was not alone. He had his people, his friends, and the memories of Ayanna to guide him. That evening, the tribe set up camp on a small plateau overlooking a wide valley. Fires were lit, and the smell of cooking food drifted across the clearing. Wicasa helped arrange the camp with careful attention, making sure that everyone was safe and comfortable. Children played nearby, their laughter carrying across the valley, while elders discussed plans for the next day. Wicasa's heart felt heavy, not because of the work before him, but because of the distance he felt from Ayanna. He longed for her presence, for the comfort of her voice, and the reassurance in her eyes. Yet he also knew that their bond had grown stronger precisely because they had endured separation. Later, after the camp had settled, Wicasa found a quiet spot near the edge of the plateau. The wind blew gently across the valley, carrying with it the earthy scent of frost-covered grass. He closed his eyes, thinking of Ayanna, imagining her standing by the river waiting, her hair catching the light of the sun. He remembered their conversations, the stories they had shared, and the way she had listened with patience and understanding. Those memories were more than just comfort. They were a source of guidance. They reminded him of the kind of person he wanted to be, the kind of connection that was worth protecting and cherishing. The next morning brought news that startled the tribe. Messengers from a nearby settlement had arrived, bringing word that the path ahead had changed. Lands that had been safe were now blocked, and a different route would require careful planning. Wicasa and the elders gathered quickly, reviewing maps, listening to reports, and discussing the safest way forward. The challenge was significant, but it was also an opportunity for him to demonstrate both leadership and patience. He considered the implications carefully, knowing that every decision affected not just himself but everyone in the tribe. The pressure weighed heavily, but it also strengthened his resolve. While the elders worked to finalize the plan, Wicasa took a moment to reflect on his feelings for Ayanna. The thought of her waiting, wondering if he would return safely, filled him with both determination and sorrow. He realized that their bond was more than a simple affection. It was a source of strength that had guided him through uncertainty. Every obstacle he faced, every challenge along the trail, was made more bearable because of the thought of her. He understood that love and duty were intertwined, each shaping the other, and that true courage required honoring both. As they prepared to continue, Wicasa noticed that the younger warriors had grown more confident. They had learned to read the land, to anticipate changes in the weather, and to watch for potential dangers. Their skills reminded him of the lessons he had learned from elders over the years. He smiled faintly, proud of their progress, yet aware that his own growth had been shaped not only by the land and the elders, but also by his connection with Ayanna. She had taught him patience, understanding, and the importance of listening, lessons that applied not only to love, but to leadership and life itself. The tribe moved forward with renewed energy, following the adjusted route through a narrow valley. The terrain was more challenging, with steep slopes and rocky paths, but Wakasa guided them carefully. He reminded himself that each step was a balance between caution and courage, between observing the land and trusting his instincts. As they traveled, he thought of Ayanna, imagining her courage in facing her own challenges during their separation. The thought gave him strength, and he felt a quiet determination to reunite with her when the journey allowed. That night, as the tribe camped near a small grove of trees, Wakasa found another moment of solitude. He walked to the edge of the camp, where the stars were beginning to appear in the clear night sky. The air was cold, and the sound of the wind through the trees was gentle yet persistent. He thought of Ayanna, wondering if she looked up at the same sky, feeling the same connection despite the distance. The memory of their final kiss, the quiet conversations, and the shared laughter was vivid in his mind. It reminded him that even when paths diverged, the heart could remain steadfast. The following days were filled with both challenges and small triumphs. The tribe navigated difficult terrain, found safe places to rest, and managed to avoid dangerous areas thanks to careful planning and observation. Wakasa remained vigilant, guiding the younger warriors and supporting the elders. Each day tested their endurance, patience, and trust in one another. Through it all, he carried the memory of Ayanna, her strength, and her understanding, which gave him the courage to lead with wisdom and care. One afternoon, the tribe reached a wide plain, and the view stretched far into the distance. Wakasa paused to take it in, noting the familiar signs in the land. The clusters of trees, the gentle rise of the hills, the patterns of the grass. It reminded him of the first days of their journey and of the moments he had shared with Ayanna by the river. The memory was comforting, a gentle reassurance that some connections endure even when life is uncertain. He allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the wind on his face and the strength of the land beneath him. As evening approached, the tribe found a suitable place to camp for the night. Fires were lit, the smell of food filled the air, and the children laughed quietly in the fading light. Wakasa helped secure the camp, ensuring that everyone was safe and prepared for the coming day. He moved with calm determination, yet his mind remained with Ayanna. He thought of the day when he would return to her, imagining their reunion and the joy it would bring. The thought strengthened him, giving him hope and motivation to continue despite the distance and the challenges ahead. Late that night, Wakasa found a quiet spot near the edge of the camp, where the stars shone brightly above the prairie. He looked up, thinking of Ayanna, and felt a sense of connection despite the miles that separated them. He understood that love, like leadership, required patience, courage, and trust. Even when separated, the bond they shared remained strong, guiding him through the journey and giving him the strength to face each challenge with determination. The stars reflected his hope, a reminder that no matter how far apart they were, some connections endure, providing light in the darkest moments.
As he settled back near the fire, Wakasa reflected on the lessons of the journey.
He had learned that life was full of uncertainty and challenge, but that resilience, patience, and courage could guide one through even the most difficult paths. He thought of Ayanna, of the trust and understanding they had shared, and realized that their bond had strengthened him in ways he had not anticipated. It was a quiet source of inspiration, a reminder that love and duty, when balanced with care and respect, could sustain him through any trial. And so as the night deepened and the tribe slept peacefully, Wakasa remained awake for a time, thinking of the woman he loved and the journey that still lay ahead. He knew that the coming days would bring both challenges and opportunities, and that the memory of their connection would guide him through each moment. The thought of Ayanna, waiting and strong, gave him courage and hope. It reminded him that even when the path is uncertain, the heart can remain steadfast, and the bonds we cherish can endure across time and distance. The morning sun rose slowly over the prairie, casting soft light across the rolling hills and the river that wound through the land like a silver ribbon. Wakasa stood at the edge of the camp, his horse grazing quietly nearby. Today was different. There was a stillness in the air that seemed to signal possibility, a sense that the path forward might lead to something long awaited. For weeks he had carried the memory of Ayana, of her gentle strength, her patience, and the quiet bond they had shared. That memory had sustained him through every challenge, every moment of exhaustion, every decision weighed with responsibility. Today, he hoped that memory would become reality. The tribe had made steady progress over the past days. The journey had been long and difficult, with uneven terrain, changing weather, and moments that tested both patience and courage. Wakasa had guided his people carefully, balancing the demands of leadership with the quiet longing in his heart. The lessons he had learned from elders, from the land, and from Mato, his loyal friend, had prepared him for challenges, but nothing had prepared him for the mix of hope and fear he felt now. What if Ayana was not waiting? What if circumstances had changed, and reunion was no longer possible? Yet he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the belief that love and determination could overcome distance and uncertainty. As the tribe prepared to move, Wakasa noticed a small figure in the distance. At first, he thought it was a child playing near the trees, but as the figure drew closer, his heart leapt. It was Ayana. She walked steadily with determination in her steps, her gaze fixed on him even from afar. The distance that had separated them for so long seemed to disappear in an instant. The wind carried her hair gently across her shoulders, and the sunlight caught her face in a way that made him stop and breathe deeply. After weeks apart, after challenges that had tested both their hearts, here she was, moving toward him with courage and hope. Wakasa dismounted quickly, moving toward her across the soft grasses. His chest felt heavy, filled with a mixture of relief, joy, and lingering fear that it might be only a fleeting moment. Ayana reached him, and they stood for a moment, taking in each other's presence without words. Then, slowly, she extended her hand, and he took it, feeling the familiar warmth that had been absent for so long. Their eyes met, and without speaking they understood what the other felt. Months of longing, of quiet reflection, of enduring separation, all condensed into this single moment of reunion. They embraced gently at first, careful and deliberate, savoring the quiet connection that had carried them through distance and uncertainty. Wakasa rested his forehead against hers, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing and the warmth of her body. It was a grounding moment, a reminder that some bonds are strong enough to survive time, space, and challenge. The prairie around them was still and quiet, as if the land itself was acknowledging their reunion. For a moment, the hardships of the journey, the weight of responsibility, and the months of longing melted away, leaving only the two of them and the connection that had grown unbroken despite everything.
After a moment, they stepped back slightly and held each other's gaze.
Wakasa spoke first, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I did not know if I would see you again," he said softly. "But I held on to the memory of you, and it carried me through everything." Ayana nodded, her eyes glistening. "I did the same," she replied. "Every day I thought of you, every moment of waiting, of uncertainty. I imagined this moment, and it kept me strong." Their words were simple, honest, and full of meaning. They spoke of endurance, hope, and the strength that comes from caring deeply for another person. The tribe, sensing the reunion, gathered nearby but gave the couple space. Children peeked from behind their parents. Elders nodded knowingly, and warriors watched with quiet respect. Everyone understood that what Wakasa and Ayana shared was special, a connection that had been tested and proven resilient. It was a reminder to all that bonds of trust and love are not easily broken, and that courage can take many forms, both in leadership and in the heart. Wakasa and Ayana walked together along the river, the place where their story had first deepened weeks ago. They spoke quietly about their experiences during the separation, sharing memories of both hardship and small joys. Wakasa described the challenges of guiding the tribe, the difficult decisions he had made, and the lessons he had learned about responsibility and leadership.
Ayana spoke of her own efforts to remain strong, to keep hope alive, and to honor the connection they shared.
Their conversation was steady, thoughtful, and full of mutual respect. Each word reinforced the bond that had brought them back together, proving that distance had only strengthened their understanding of one another. As the afternoon sun rose higher, Wakasa and Ayana found a quiet spot near a tree that offered shade. They rested together, speaking of the future, of possibilities, and of the challenges they would face. Wakasa explained how he hoped to balance his duties to the tribe with the life he wished to build with her. Ayana listened carefully, offering support, guidance, and reassurance. Their conversation was filled with planning, compromise, and hope, proof that love is not only about feeling, but also about thoughtful action and understanding. The day passed slowly, with both of them savoring every moment. They walked along the river, laughed quietly at shared memories, and simply enjoyed the presence of one another. Wakasa marveled at her resilience, her determination to reunite despite obstacles, and her quiet strength. Ayana admired his patience, his courage, and his ability to balance duty with care. The connection between them had deepened, becoming more than affection. It had become a partnership built on respect, trust, and shared experience. As evening approached, the tribe gathered to prepare camp. Fires were lit, and the smell of cooking food filled the air. Wakasa and Ayana sat near the fire together, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. The cool breeze carried the sounds of the prairie, the rustle of grass, the distant call of an owl, and the gentle flow of the river. Wakasa felt a sense of peace he had not known for weeks, a quiet assurance that despite challenges, despite uncertainty, they were together. The memory of the struggles, the distance, and the longing now served as a foundation for the hope and joy they shared in this moment. Late at night, Wakasa walked a short distance to a quiet spot by the river. He looked up at the stars, thinking of the months that had passed and the journey that had brought them here. Ayana joined him silently, standing beside him, their hands touching gently. Together, they watched the reflection of the stars on the water, a mirror of the vast sky above. No words were needed. The silence was enough to convey understanding, love, and connection. In that moment, the world seemed simple, clear, and full of possibility. In the following days, the tribe continued its journey, but the presence of Ayana brought a new energy. Wakasa moved with renewed purpose, guiding the group with confidence while also cherishing the moments he shared with her. Their bond was no longer fragile. It was resilient, strengthened by separation and proven through reunion. Each challenge along the trail was now met with shared determination, each decision enriched by mutual respect and understanding. Eventually they reached a familiar part of the prairie, the place where Wakasa had first felt the ache of leaving her behind. They paused there, looking out across the land together. Wakasa spoke softly. "This land, these skies, they remind me of why we endure, why we continue, and why hope is never wasted." Ayana smiled, resting her hand gently on his arm. "And they remind me of the bond we share, the strength we have found in each other, and the courage to keep moving forward." The words were simple but filled with meaning, a reflection of the journey they had undertaken both physically and emotionally. As the sun began to set, painting the prairie in shades of gold and pink, Wakasa and Ayana stood together, feeling the warmth of the moment. The journey had tested them, the distance had challenged them, but in the end, they had found one another. The tribe, observing the quiet celebration of reunion, felt a renewed sense of hope and connection. The story of Wakasa and Ayana became a quiet legend among the people, not of dramatic heroism, but of endurance, patience, courage, and the power of love guided by respect and understanding. The night settled over the prairie, calm and serene. Fires burned softly, and the stars reflected on the river in sparkling patterns. Wakasa and Ayana sat together near the water, holding hands, speaking quietly, and simply enjoying the presence of one another. The memory of the challenges, the separation, and the longing now served as a foundation for a future built on trust, care, and shared understanding. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but together they had the strength to face whatever came next. And so, as the prairie slept under the stars and the river whispered its steady song, Wakasa and Ayana remained side by side. The final kiss that had started their journey of hope and longing became a symbol of endurance, proof that love, patience, and courage can overcome distance and uncertainty. In the quiet, vast world around them, they had found one another, and in that finding, they had discovered the true meaning of connection, commitment, and heart.